Okay, well, let's get underway. And again, thank you for joining us this evening and this morning, depending upon where you're located. And welcome to our VSANA seminars, a series of programs to help inform you about the art of stone appreciation. Our seminars are brought to you by VSANA, the Viewing Stone Association of North America. And our goal is simple. We try to provide you with accurate information about stones that have the ability to invoke feelings of something greater than just a rock, as in this one shown here. Now, at this time, I would like to ask you to mute your microphones because I'll be talking and then Andy Moerlein will be joining me and we'll be chatting back and forth as we look at a number of the award-winning stones in the contest. You can send us questions via the chat box at any time. Hiromi will be monitoring those and we'll answer them. And then at the end of the program, we will open this up. You can unmute your microphones and start asking questions, hopefully to Andy, not me, but I'll certainly try to answer them. Well, I'm delighted to be with you. If you have the opportunity to ever visit, we can chat and look at stones in my stone room. And our special guest tonight is Andy Moerlein, a trained professional artist, a sculptor. And together we will be discussing the Small Stone Worlds Apart project. And in doing so, we will show you and talk about many of the award-winning stones and the recently published book, Small Stones Worlds Apart. Now, small stones is not something new. It's not a passing fad. And we have been informed by ancient Chinese and Japanese traditions of appreciating aspects of nature. And we found that small size stones, while popular among many collectors, have been largely neglected in major exhibitions and in most books and articles about these small rocks. This example of a piece of malachite from Hubei province near Wuhan is just one. This small stone, or this type of stone, was first described in the Stone Catalog of Cloudy Forests, published 900 years ago. And in that book, there are other very small stones have been described. But as I said, they've been largely overlooked and underrepresented in the stone appreciation world. So we're going to try to rectify that this evening. These are rainflower pebbles, known in China as yuashi. They're found in ancient gravel beds along the Long River, or Yangtze, as many of us know it. And they are a variety of stones. They can be agates, opals, various types of stones that have been ground and rounded in the gravel pits. And they've been found in ancient burial sites near Nanjing that are 2,000 and 3,000 years old. Now, we don't know how they considered it, if they viewed these just as decorative objects or if they had some other significance. But small stones have been an important aspect of viewing stone appreciation for thousands of years. Now, philosophically, can you imagine holding the entire world in your hand? What am I talking about? In Chinese stone practices, the scholars believe that the energy in the world coalesced into rocks, and that a single rock could represent the cosmos or the earth. And 900 years ago, they were trying to explain why they were clouds or why there was mist around the base of mountains. And the explanation at that time was this is the energy escaping from the rocks. So aspects of stone appreciation are linked to the Asian philosophies of Buddhism and Taoism. Now, in 2020, we were fortunate to participate in a small stone competition and exhibition in Toyota, Japan. Is the Aiseki Club Toyota that had organized this. And we also had the opportunity to visit with many collectors in their homes to see their stone, their private collection. And we noticed in their homes, there were many small stones represented. So this was, and then when we went to the major exhibitions, the exhibit of Japanese Suiseki masterpieces, the Meihin in Tokyo in June of each year, and then the newer Japan Suiseki exhibition that's staged in the Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum, small stones were largely absent, not totally, but largely absent in these major exhibitions. And one of the reasons for this is that the venue for displaying the stones, the Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum has large high ceiling galleries. Displaying stones in those buildings, they will look totally out of scale. And so you have to have the proper size building. Here we have a traditional Meiji era building that once was a restaurant, then taken over by the city, and it's used for various civic functions and for citizens to use. In the lower right is Tom Nishiyama, the president of the Aiseki Club Toyota. And the picture above is on the second floor of this, showing some of the exhibitions. You can see that the ceilings are low, the rooms are relatively small, and so the proper scale is very important in small stone exhibitions. And by the way, if you don't know it, Aiseki means love of stones. Now, our purpose for the contest is to promote the display of small, aesthetically pleasing viewing stones, following both contemporary and traditional methods. We opened it to the public worldwide. There's no entry fees, no age limits. And the only criteria was that the stone cannot be more than 15 centimeters high, wide, or in depth. I divided the stones into 4 categories. These are arbitrary, largely arbitrary. The first one is traditional stones and traditional stone displays. And the difference between a traditional stone and a display is relatively simple. Traditional stones consist of a stone and a base or a tray that it's in. Stone displays is when additional artifacts or accessory items are used, such as a display table, a piece of art, or other objects. And contemporary stones is relatively new type of stones where people are looking for new ways of exhibiting stones that are more compatible with some of the contemporary lifestyles and apartments. Many of the younger stone collectors prefer contemporary stones rather than traditional. Now, it doesn't matter which one that you prefer. Most people still follow traditional methods, and that's fine with us. Now, in this contest, we decided not to award a first or second or third place or honorable mention. That's simply too difficult because there's too many excellent stones. So what we tried to do is recognize the top 10% of the entries in each category. And the top 10% received an excellent designation, and the next 10% received an outstanding designation. The entries were blind judged. That is, the judge, Andy, didn't know who owned the stone or where it came from. That was totally hidden from him. And I sent him all 573 entries into these 4 categories, and he worked his way through them. Now, I'm going to ask Andy to talk about the joys and the challenges of judging this contest in just a minute. And we hope that we know that not everyone is going to agree with him, if I had 10 different judges, I would get 10 different answers or sets of stones. So we respect people's opinion. And I went to Andy to serve as a judge for this contest. And I think it's important to tell you why. I went outside the traditional stone appreciation world of stone collectors, and I wanted to get someone in the art community, an established professional artist, to look at our stones, to give us a fresh look. Because if we want to elevate stone appreciation from a hobby to an accepted form of art, we have to get artists, professional artists involved in this. And we have to look for them to recognize the value and importance of viewing stones, suiseki, susok, and other forms. So Andy has his bachelor's degree from Dartmouth College in visual arts, master's of fine arts from Cornell, and he's well-established sculptor with exhibitions all over the world. And he and his wife, Donna Dodson, have been established as myth makers, making huge temporary public art using bamboo. Now I'm going to ask Andy to tell us all about the joys and challenges of judging this stone. I've been in his position many times, and so I can appreciate what he's about to say. So Andy, would you like to take over and tell us a little bit about the judging?
Sure, Tom. Hi, and thanks to everyone for gathering together and sharing your stones with me. It's really been an honor. I really appreciate everyone who's joined us today out of enthusiasm and curiosity. It was a total honor to be invited to stroll through this huge and varied collection of submitted stones. Small stones. What a dynamic and inspiring variety I looked through. You know, when Tom first broached the subject of me judging, I thought, sure, I have a deep familiarity with stones, and I have read page through volumes of scholarship and documentation. I've been following this field basically since I was in college. And I've looked pretty deeply at some of the subtleties of Chinese gongshi, the Japanese suiseki, the Korean susok. And I feel like I'm a little bit familiar with new and lively developments in the world of contemporary stone display. But oh my gosh, I've got to admit, in the end, I felt very unprepared for the task of judging. When presented with just the sheer numbers of submissions and the variety and the quality, I really feel in many ways that my selection process might be evidently capricious. But I apologize ahead of time. I am an artist. You know, that's how I see stones. I see them through the eyes of a sculptor. So you'll hear tonight my comments about individual pieces, and I hope that I'm not completely missing the point from your point of view. But I hope you recognize also that there's a lot of variety in what we all see in the world, and I think that it's really important that we share these ideas. To me, as a sculptor, it's all about movement and balance, shape, color, and content. That's the lens I look at my career. You know, it's funny, when you're wearing a mask, it's awfully hard to lick your fingers and get to the next page. I do that I do that when I'm reaching for my credit card all the time. Oops, it won't work. As Tom and I conferenced over my impressions of the submissions, it was evident the vast historic precedent and aesthetic framework that Tom totally understood. And I understood intuitively, but I couldn't really articulate it. This whole judging process has been such an education. Evaluating so many stones has made me feel like a naive student, just embarking on this grand adventure, just beginning again to have stone appreciation and scholarship. I appreciate very much, and I'm very honored by all the rocks that people submitted for awakening my appreciation again for stone selection, collecting, and display. Tom, thanks for your support at every stage. I look forward to chatting with you tonight.
Okay.
or this morning.
The first category, traditional stones, we had more submissions in this category than any of the other three categories. Perhaps 2/3 of the submissions were their traditional stones consisting of a stone and a base. So now Andy and I are going to run through about 40 of these stones to talk, show you, and discuss. Now there's 114 or 115 award-winning stones, and we don't have time tonight to show you all of those, but we'll tell you how you can do that. So our first stone, Andy, is a very simple stone, very simple form, but yet it's more than just a simple curved stone. What do you think of this? How do you view this stone?
Tom, this piece really nails the category, and I'm so happy we started with it. There's something about this stone. I mean, it just exudes an authentic found stone sensibility. I want to hold it in my hand. I want to feel its weight. The shape is so satisfying. It's just enough. It's understated and comfortable, subtly irregular, but not extravagantly misshaped. The carved base so fits it. It's both subdued and compelling. It has a discrete color match and it's well balanced, but it's not benign. It's very much engaged in the piece.
Okay.
See the stone up close.
Okay, now we're going to go to our next entry, which is contrast sharply. This came to us from Indonesia, from a collector there. And this is a really exotic stone, Andy. Tell us about this one.
Well, it's a great contrast, Tom. We're off to a great start. This stone boogies. The deep facets that are inside it are emphasized by cloudy veins of mineral. There's a straddle to it. The slots and loft and smoothness, they all rock my impression of this selection. I want to fiddle with it. I want to see it in person from all sides. It's a frustration I have looking at these pictures. I can't see this tiny little piece and hold it and look at it and see what it is. Though most collectors won't let me handle them, but some will. The rich base is really quite lively. It's reflective of the shapes, but it's not imitative and it's not distracting. It really contributes nicely.
Okay, thanks. We'll now move to a different part of the world where a seasoned collector, Claudio Villa, has entered this beautiful Palombino limestone from Liguria. So he's named this Echoes of the Wind. Andy, tell us your thoughts about this impressive stone.
Tom, I've seen those mountains. I mean, that's what's so cool. I mean, you know, when you grow up around mountains, these don't seem so unfamiliar, but I long for those. I want to walk around the shore of this massive mountain cluster. Those slick lowland ridges beg to be explored. This tiny stone is a great example of our world isolated and compressed into the gem of a stone. The base slightly hovers the piece too. It completes an exquisite example of traditional suiseki design.
Okay, and we'll move to back to Asia. This stone was submitted by Nelson Ching from the Philippines. The stone itself is a Songhua stone from northeastern China. It's long been a favorite of stone connoisseurs there, and it comes in various shapes and forms and has been used at one time to make ink stones. So, Andy, your impressions of this one?
You know, this is really fun to come up with this because it's a totally traditional stone. There's a real preference for black, and this one introduces to us a gloriously smoky crystalline brown. I love that. It's just so lovely. What I enjoy besides the color are the bold shapes and the dramatic surface wrinkles. We see two mountains, each with their own personality. slashed by that void. My eye is drawn to the left side plateau, and then I drop down and slide over the lower shoreline ridges. This stone is elegantly shown in a well-proportioned base. It truly is an excellent stone and base combination.
Okay, we'll now shift to a stone from Mexico. There's a wonderful group of people in Mexico pursuing Suiseki. It's relatively young there. And this one is called Dios del Viento, or God of the Wind. Andy, your comments about this stone?
Well, if stones danced, this one is on point. It's an excellent example of the ordinary materials we gather with sentimentality and we handle, reimagining, our eyes seeking the mystery and personalities of a particular stone, trying to understand why we bent over to claim this one stone out of the world's rock pile. How delightfully the collector positioned her stone, how perfectly the base presents this rock as important, evocative. This is a real success of both collection and presentation.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to another display, another stone that received an excellent award. This is from Chung Kruger from Southern California, a seasoned collector who's been collecting along the west coast of North America for a long time, and a leading expert in Korean viewing stones. So, Andy, your comments on this one?
Well, what I find really intriguing is that this stone is so gentle. It seems almost to breathe. Everything about it rests perfectly. It's very serene. And yet there's a parched and isolated feel to this. The dusty colors, the coarse sand, the uninviting cliff faces all speak to me of a harsh environment. This stone exudes a stillness that's lonely.
Yeah, when you look at this, it looks like a much bigger display. I look at this stone and I think it's a half a meter wide or more, but it's tiny. It's less than 6 inches wide. So it's really a spectacular stone. Now we're going to shift to something just the opposite of that calm, peaceful mountain, to this hut stone from Northern California, from the Eel River, collected by Sharon Sommerfeld.
This is a great transition, Tom. What I love about the many stones that were submitted from so many different cultures and personalities is how each stone speaks its own story. I love how you have curated tonight's presentation. The first few stones were very much traditional viewing stones. This stone feels more our scale, like it's still tiny in size following the parameters of the call for entries, but I can feel ourselves beside this stone. It could be 12, 15 feet high, but it's still manageable. It doesn't seem like a landscape. It really is lovely. I find the massive color resting within this precisely formed but fairly unadorned base really delightful.
Okay, and we'll shift over to Europe to a wonderful collector in northern part of Italy. We can always count on Ulisse to find very provocative stones. I love this stone, but tell me about it, Andy.
This one it looks like it should just fall apart. I mean, it's a marvel of apparent fragility. And I really love it on that active root display. I mean, there's that shaped wood and everything is so, it's a perfect pairing in some ways, I think. The energetic stone kind of subdues, but it still reflects the lively wood base. I love this presentation. And of course, the title's cute, Dragon Egg.
All right, we'll shift to another part of the world now, to South America. one of the few stone collectors there, Alejandro Bernardi, collecting in the Sweet River or Rio Dulce. And he named this stone the Mother of the River. Comments, Andy?
Another great stone with a apt collector's title. I think that's great. We can all kind of see in this the maternal spirit this tiny stone possesses. What intrigued me was really that the collector's eye and the well-composed photo made this stone significant. Presenting it, say, laying on its side or simply held in your hand, I'm not sure that I would have recognized the figure in it. And I think that's what's just so cool about this is that, we constantly are finding rocks and making them become something to us. And in that way, sharing it with others and teaching them what you see in a particular stone.
I jumped the gun on you, but we're now going to this stone, a yellow wax stone from the Kedah region of Malaysia. And this region of Malaysia is well known for its red and yellow and even black wax stones. Very shiny, very hard stones. Your comments on this one?
Oh, yeah. Can I touch this stone? I mean, I want to hold it. We all know that yellow wax stones are cherished and deeply valued parts of any collector's full set or bucket list or must-have types. And this one's just really exquisite. I have seen a few that were the size of a torso that didn't really have as much pure and effective, sense about it as this tiny morsel. It's so sensual. It looks like it would be soft and doughy. And yet we all know it's as hard as a rock.
Okay. Now this one might be more challenging to people. Say, why is this a good stone? Your comments on this one?
Well, it sure is an ugly stone. And it's an unfriendly rock in a lot of ways. There's prickly paths. You can weave your way through it. But the learned scholar who tinkers with rock collecting always wants to surprise his friends with the unique. And this stone sure nails it for me. It has resistance and tactile appeal kind of in equal measures. You don't really think it's going to feel good to touch it, but you really want to. I find that really fun. What a contrast to our previous stone, where it's just that wax stone, so soft. I really like the base. I think it needed that hint of warmth to fill out the composition here.
Okay, well, Andy, this provocative entry came to us from Alan Detmar in Germany. And I know that he has a good understanding of the geography of China. Sichuan province is located in southwestern China, and it goes from relatively low elevation all the way up to the Tibetan Plateau. And so the poetic name for this, the road to Sichuan, is harder to ascend than that to the heavens. And in older days, moving up onto the plateau involved a very long, treacherous route up from low elevation to 18 to 20,000 feet. So when I look at this stone, I see the roof of the world. I see the Tibetan Plateau here. I know I've been on this route in Sichuan province up to the Tibetan Plateau, and I can just imagine what it was long before we had cars and trucks to take us up that way. So to me, this stone has a lot of meaning. To others, it may not, if they're not familiar with the geography of China. Well, let's move on to this rugged stone. I'm going to let you comment on it first. It comes to us from a seasoned collector in northern Italy. The Lombardy region has part of the Alps in it, various mountainous areas. And the collector, Santo Barata, is just, as I said, comes up with amazing stones each year.
Yeah. I still look at this stone with great admiration. It's just gorgeous. It ties up all our previous conversations about scale and presence, surface texture, and it introduces the hole, perforation, penetration. It's just a lovely stone. And wow, it's set in an exquisitely carved, gloriously designed, perfectly matched, impressively compatible base. I like this stone.
Okay, and just for our viewers, if you look at this base and see how the base conforms to the contours of the stone hasn't been cut or altered, but the base has been carefully crafted by Santo to fit this stone. This is my opinion, a perfect example of a viewing stone or suiseki or whatever name you want to add to it. It's just a gorgeous stone. We'll now move on to our second category, the contemporary stones, the more modern stones, so to speak. And we'll see what kind of entries we have. Our first one comes to us by another seasoned collector in Italy, Gianluigi Inni, and he's a great stone collector, and he has a great sense of aesthetics in the garden, for stones, and for art in general. Your thoughts on this one, Andy?
Let me breathe. Oh my gosh, it takes my breath away. Such surfaces, really great colors. It's odd and it's irregular. It's kind of got ugly but touchable shapes. What magic was conjured to come up with this particular stone? I don't know. And again, the hole, the base is as awkward as the stone. They suit each other. The balance is endearing and just so right. This unsettling stone and base composition speak volumes about this art form we are celebrating tonight, this morning.
Gian named this stone Mountain of My House, or My House in the Mountains. Very imaginative title. Well, let's move on to the next one. This is certainly another provocative stone. And tell us your thoughts on this.
Oh, here's another delightfully integrated presentation. The stone seems poised. The naturally curved grain of the wood, the base that it's there kneels and holds up the rock for us all to see. The two parts, stone and wood, share an association of colors, tones, surface, and design. Yet they stand unique, together, but one object.
Okay. Our next entry comes to us from Vietnam, named Beautiful Wonder. Andy, your comments?
Well, Tom, I'd like to know if you found this rock along your walks, whether you have paid much attention to it. It's so quirky, but the way it's displayed, I immediately want to sit on that high mesa. I can feel the lean and cantilever of this stone and base. I can't imagine that people wouldn't want to climb or sit or experience this, depending on what scale it was. It just seems such an odd shape to bring home. But the presentation that it's given just makes everything seem normal. What an exquisite design, the precisely carved and fit base for such a tiny object. It's very, very small. I love it.
Okay. Now, our next entry is from Spain. Raphael has been collecting stones for over 40 years. And he named this one Water Mountain. Now, we discovered that in this contest, it's hard to show scale. When you look at the pictures of these stones, it's hard to tell if it's 6 centimeters wide or 60 centimeters wide or bigger. And so the difficulty in illustrating small stones is how do you show the scale? In this case, Raphael put his hand in there to show us the size of this stone. Your thoughts on this one?
Well, you know, Tom, as I judged all these tiny stones, I had to remind myself to appreciate their unique stature. Such meticulous stone collecting. When I look at this one, I think, oh, whoa, such precise woodworking. I mean, here you're looking for these tiny stones and you hold them and you fiddle with them, and then you have to have the challenge of carving a base for them. I mean, it's really remarkable fun to have poked through all of these. When you see them up on a screen, you tend to forget. This base is just a real example of the very best of craft.
Okay, now we'll move on to another unusual stone coming from us from another seasoned collector from Wisconsin, who collects in Canada and Lake Huron. And your thoughts on this stone?
Oh, Tom, when I saw this, I could see that this was a master of design making magic. I sense here a collector who must love geology for all of its frigid, rip, roar, tear, and folding. The base must have been created by a lover of wood. Look at that grain. It's just a beautiful piece of wood. I imagine the stone and this wood base are the product of a singular vision. And this is what judging the show has done to me. I've become entranced, not just by the rocks, but also beguiled and intrigued by each finder maker. This is great fun.
Okay, we're going to move to our third category, traditional stone displays. This is where a stone and base is shown with an additional accessory or several. Our first entry we'll show you is one named Preacher, comes to us from Taiwan. And this is a striking display. It takes my breath away. How about you, Andy?
Well, selecting the best of the displays always required me to first I had to adore the stones. And then I tried to see how the display supports the visual script of the stone and base. This display shows a traditional split shelf, but it's held by the circle line. And yet that line is interrupted in this particular one, and the scale and the split line and the split shelves. There's just something about it that just really works for me. And there's a beautiful space. These two lovely stones are so able to interact and engage in this setting.
Yeah, I'd love to have this display in my home, but I know that won't happen. Okay, we'll move on now to an entry from the Philippines. This comes to us from Anthony Gadang, the president of the Natural Stone Society of the Philippines. Your thoughts on this one?
Well, this display comes with a storage box. And, that's just it so changes the story, I think. This stone is so precious to the owner that it comes with a custom setting. It is taken out for display, for special occasions, and it always travels securely with a label. What I love about this stone itself is its solidity. It's not really very inviting. There's a hardness and rugged surface that is kind of unappealing. Some might say it is ugly, and I do not mean in a repulsive way. So what do I mean? Today I was doing some reading, and a notable curator of Van Gogh visited the olive groves that he painted and remarked, what a difficult subject to paint, how unpicturesque the groves of twisted trees were. She thought that what attracted Van Gogh to paint them wasn't their appearance, but their great symbolic potential. This is how I see stones I call ugly. They move me, not for their beauty or their grace, but for their presence. And this stone has a great presence.
Well, Andy, can ugly stones be beautiful? Considered as beautiful?
I think so. It's a strange word, and I certainly know that English doesn't really attach very many meanings to ugly. It's been really slandered, and I think maybe in the colloquial world it doesn't have the beauty that it carries in other languages. I certainly know that the Chinese, when they speak of ugly, their translation of it is much richer and more diverse than ours.
Thanks for that. Let's move on to the next display. This one comes to us from France. It's a pair of chrysanthemum flower stones from Nao Valley above Gifu in Japan. And he named this the twins of the valley. Your thoughts on this one?
Oh, I think these two stones are so well matched. In those exquisite bases, they're treasures. The colors pop. I adore the raw exposed mineral pattern. I just love the setting. It's so bold to put two of them together in that way. I love it.
Okay, thanks for your comments on that one. Let's move on to this stone, this layered stone. It's a Japanese stone, but submitted by a fellow collector in the Philippines.
Yeah. You know, this is a really tough stone. I don't think that it's easy for a lot of people to appreciate. I really loved it because of the interesting shape of the rock and the translucent red. But what I also loved was the great curved base delightfully mimics the shape and catches that little arch to it. And then the ping of the red that awakens the whole rather dark composition. I don't know. I really love that one. And I hope it's not wrongly chosen as an excellent award, but I still, every time I look at it, I smile. So.
Yeah, it's a beautiful stone, truly is. Well, what about this one? This is quite a different type of stone and display. Comes to us from Pietro Prudentino from Italy, called the Silence of the Night.
You know, this is a beach stone that every kid would pick up and treasure. I mean, it's the dot is so interesting, the flowing whites. What I was really intrigued by was how simply by standing it up on that edge and then adding that deer, it suddenly becomes a wintry landscape and moon. I mean, it has real personality in the presentation, and that's why this display got that award.
Okay, thank you. Well, moving on, we have a display from Gundren Binz, well-known stone collector from Germany.
Oh my gosh. You know, it's a rather familiar split shelf display. You know, so it was tough to call it this, except that, you know, like those stones are so beautiful and they're so well balanced in that particular display. I just felt really comfortable doing it. I mean, it's just so perfect.
Okay, now we'll go to our fourth and last category, contemporary stone displays. And our first entry in here that with an outstanding award is this stone from California named Can I Eat This?
Yeah. This is a delightful category. At times I know I say this too much. I felt really unsure of my choices. There were so many interesting and odd presentations that we were sent. Here, what I was really convinced by was the bold similarities. The stone on the right is wild with bubbly perforations and that slot that, you know, opens and closes, all rough and boil. And then to the left is that dried seed pod. And the two of them really made great sense in companionship. It intrigued me.
Okay, this is David Gruszinski has specialized in small stone and small beautiful objects. So we're glad that he participated. Now, this is an unusual display. It's by Pierre Jardin from Southern California, and it's called A Place That Exists Only in Moonlight. Andy, your thoughts on this one?
Well, you know, that quote is the name of the book, and it's Patterson is intriguing. I I don't know much about her, but I know that she's a word artist. So this exquisitely, perfectly matched stone, and it's a really beautiful stone, sitting on this book of ideas and words. There's a dynamic conversation going on between the collector's affection for this stone and the conceptual result of this pairing. Like all the images we have enjoyed tonight, this for me is the very best of visual art.
Yeah, you know, the book contains 100 short texts, each one concerning the landscape, the universe, and dealing with earthly and geological time. And so Patterson's text evokes feelings in your mind, causes you to think about something greater. Just the term, a place that exists only in moonlight. What does she mean? It excites you and it stimulates you. And so just as the rock does, so does the text in this book. So the two both are evoking feelings in the viewer. So this is a wonderful, another wonderful exhibit in my mind. Now, what about this one? This is quite a interesting one.
Well, it's certainly an irresistibly jolly display. The low furniture with its multitude of slots set a pattern that is repeated in the lanterns above. The two figures share gesture and their simple expressions. This stone has a great presence. And what's really fun is the title Weightlifters brings a sense of sumo wrestler into focus. This is really fun storytelling. I love it.
Yeah, this is from Tom Nishiyama, who's with us tonight. And if you ever attended a sporting event in Japan, sumo wrestling or weightlifting, you notice that there are people parading around the platform with banners and other things, making announcements or notifying the public. They're really quite spectacular to view. So, Tom, thank you for this wonderful entry. Now, here's one from an artist from Southern California, Richard Turner. Your thoughts on this one?
Oh, wow. This lovely stone is delightfully mimicked in that fantastic chair. The architecture of the base and the lounge furniture are each so compelling, and yet, wow, look at that rock. It possesses my fullest attention. This is a wild display of really special stone. Of a special stone.
Okay, and we'll move on to this one from the Netherlands, husband and wife team. The stones from the Gobi Desert look like some form of chalcedone, but what do you see here?
You know, when I was judging these works, I was, as you said, they were identified only by numbers. I had no titles, names, or even nations of origin. In this stone, I saw the curious lean and the green tint as a Penjing style tree. And it was a delight to discover that the collector had a similar impression and named the display tree. It's just it's interesting how we convey all these ideas. I also see the small cat as kind of a scale implying device, turning this tiny display into a feeling of home.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to thank Andy for serving as judge. If you want to learn more about Andy and his work, there's a link here, and we recorded the session and we'll be posting it on YouTube. I'll notify everyone of that. And so I encourage you to see his work. It's been stone-inspired art. Now, we were only able to show you about 1/3 of the award-winning stones. And we published a book recently. It's in electronic form or in hard copy. Both are available from our website. If you go to it, you can order it. We'll be happy to send it to you. The book contains over 400 of the entries. Now, not all of the entries didn't make it into the book. Some, the picture quality was poor, it was out of focus, or it had stickers on it, various things that we had to, it rendered it inappropriate or unacceptable. But in the book, we have over 400 of the stones that were submitted to the contest. And as I said, both the electronic version of the book is available as well as the hard print. We also encourage you to visit our website, www.VSANA.org, to see, learn more information, and it's updated every month. And our seminars, as I mentioned, are posted on YouTube for further viewing. Now, I want to thank you for watching. We're going to end the slideshow and open it up to you. If you could unmute your microphones now. And if you have questions for Andy, tough questions, you ask